Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on Season 1, Episode 9 of the DC Universe Titans series entitled Hank and Dawn. And for my money, this is proving the point I've been trying to make over every episode discussion video I've talked about this series. Whenever this show focuses upon any other characters than the main foursome, it is almost exemplary in the writing, in the characterization, in the drama, in the connectability to those characters, and this episode was no exception. This one, I think, might even push it a little over, the top of the Doom Patrol episode as now being my favorite episode of the series. Doom Patrol coming still a close second to this one because of just the emotional connectivity between the characters themselves and the connectivity I had as a viewer to them for it. The writing of Hank and Dawn, Hawk and Dove in this episode was just spectacular. It was exemplary. And it's everything I want from this show that it's not, giving me. It's not showing me as far as it relates to the main four characters. Dick Grayson is the closest representative of any of these characters that has something like this, a connectability, a likability to his character. Beast Boy kind of comes in a close second, even though we haven't really seen a whole hell of a lot of him. Just what little there has been really something that I've found connectivity to. The idea of his never having bitten a human before and then actually finding himself in the precarious position of having to do so to fend off, an attacker in a sense, but as a product of just the extreme situation he had been put through in the asylum episode and everything. So Dick and Beast Boy, Gar, they are the two most likable and relatable characters in the way they are written thus far. But that's still not saying very much when you look at the episodes like the first Hawk and Dove episode. To a point, there were still unlikable things that both of those characters did in that episode for me. But, Jason Todd comes along and he is a three-dimensional roundabout character. The Doom Patrol episode was just magnifique, and this episode was as well. Once, it didn't take me long to get into it. I didn't know what to expect, and I was very much sort of put off from the get-go thinking, oh, we're not going to pick up with where we left off. That humongo bungo freaking cliffhanger in the previous episode with Corey suddenly like waking up, to her real identity probably, and then choke holding Rachel, and I thought sort of in the beginning of this episode when we're getting these ghostly apparitions of Rachel, I'm like, oh, they just put that in there. They just sort of shoehorn that stuff in there so you don't forget. Oh yeah, no, we know this stuff is going on. We know how tension filled that cliffhanger was, which was just kind of an OG's thing for me. But no, we haven't forgotten. We haven't, it hasn't slipped our minds that this is supposed to be about Dick and Corey and, Rachel and Gar and everything like that. We're just taking an aside for this episode, but they can kind of use the Doctor Who timey-wiminess, if you will, as far as this sort of, I guess you could say telepathic message from Rachel reaches both Hank and Dawn. It's only something that Dawn actually perceives in her unconscious state laying in the hospital bed. But presumably this is not long after the events that are unfolding in the previous episode, probably coinciding with it. These flashbacks that are unfolding in this episode with, of course, Hank and his little brother, the original Dove in the Hawk and Dove framework. We see the abuse that he suffered as a child and how this was sort of the catalyst. His younger brother being a little more reserved and sensitive, as was the Dove in the comics, and but his being sort of the instigator to Hank to find an outlet for that pain and that frustration and to take out that ill will on people who were actually, the ne'er-do-wells and the creeps and pedophiles and things in the world in their local area and everything. And so it was a catharsis for his character, and seeing what he went through, seeing the bond that he and his brother shared, it was just perfect. It was perfectly written, perfectly paced. It thoroughly grabbed me by the lapels and kept me attuned to the episode. It impacted me emotionally. And of course we carry on sort of the flashbacks with Dawn and calling back to her time as a ballerina on the ballet stage, and I thought it was just pitch perfect. As a Star Trek fan, Star Trek The Next Generation as well, you might see the little poster back here, and there's Marina Sirtis, the guest actress who plays Dawn's mother in this episode, which was just perfect casting. Loved seeing Marina Sirtis again, and their whole conversation in the cafe, the restaurant, whatever it is, about her abusive relationship and how Dawn and her sister had to leave, Dawn and Holly respectively, and how, you know, sort of, I mean, her mother thinks she views her as being weak for not being able to get away from this man who is abusing her physically, and it's tragic. And as somebody who has suffered such abuses in life, I found it highly relatable, highly impactful emotionally. I found myself getting misty-eyed during that confession on Dawn's part, saying, you know, I don't think you're weak. I think you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. But you need to close off this man. You need to be rid of him and set better sights for your life. And it was just magnificent. It was magnificent writing and pacing and characterization and every last dripping thing I desperately want from this show. But I want it from the main foursome as well, you know. Whenever they deal with a character who is not part of the main cast, who is not part of the main foursome, they are more well-rounded and more well-written. They have better characterization than even the main characters of the series, the titular Titans. You can mince words and you can argue that all of these characters at one time or another were considered Titans, so it's not really, you know, stretching too far the limits of bearability to focus on them and not focus on the main foursome. But these were the main four characters who were billed as the top billing of the series: Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy, and Robin. And yet they are like the second-class citizens to their own show as far as the characterization and writing. Depth of character goes. Relatability goes, for my tastes, for my money. Same with Donna Troy. As I said, she was the saving grace of the previous episode because she came in as a background DC character, and barring a couple of bad little bits of CG, she was immediately relatable and likable, and that rubbed off on Dick that much more, you know, making him that much more likable. And that is this episode in a nutshell. Hank and Dawn, and Hank and his little brother calling back on their pasts, the palpability of that, the tension of that, the relatability of that, the sympathy that is drawn out of you for that, and the empathy. Similarly so with even just a few lines of dialogue back and forth between Dawn and her mother relating to the abusive relationship she needs to break herself free from. It was exemplary. I keep using that word. It was spectacular. There's another word I keep using because this is what I want from this show. This is all I ask. I just want relatable, likable, empathetic characters that relate well with each other as much as they relate with us, the viewers, you know. And that's what I got out of this episode. Now, I will say I do have a few small gripes, and that was the check-ins of Rachel, this ghostly apparition, where it just felt so out of place and just reminded me in the early going of this episode that, oh, we took another, you know, left field turn. We completely forgot the absolute penultimate tension of that cliffhanger, and we're on a complete aside for this episode. Thankfully, this episode was so well written that I soon forgot it, even though we saw Rachel twice, and then again toward the end of the episode where she sort of is integral to waking Dawn up out of her unconscious state and appealing to her that, you know, she's in danger, and Hawk and Dove, and they got to find Jason Todd. They all got to race to the scene and try to figure out where she is to help her, to save her, probably from, you know, Corey. And apart from those beats with Rachel, you know, cropping up in this episode, which just felt out of place until the very end, there was the, you know, for my money, poor CGI of the accident where it claimed the lives of Dawn's mother and Hank's younger brother. I guess they were both struck by the vehicle at the same time. I was a little confused about it because of the way it was shot. You know, you see a van oncoming and it doesn't look very believable, and then they do an overhead shot where, you know, two vehicles crash and they look like billiard balls just popping apart from each other after hitting each other. Didn't look convincing at all for my money, and I had to kind of sit there puzzled for a minute, like, oh, wait, what happened? They both the mother and the brother got killed in that same accident. You know, It did defy, suspension of disbelief just a little bit because I didn't think it was convincingly CG animated, but the rest of the episode was saved with the rapport that began to grow between Hank and Dawn, respectively. Her wanting to know more about his brother, his wanting to know more about her mother. I mean, I only have a very limited knowledge of Hawk and Dove from the comics, and I knew about the brother being the original Dove in the Hawk and Dove duo, and I knew that after his death, which I think happened in a completely different way in the comics, that eventually when Hank met Dawn, there was an empathetic nature to her that was very much reminiscent, come from similar cloth to his younger brother, and they meshed so well. And you got every essence of that in this episode. Their rapport, as I say, the evolution of their getting closer and closer and closer and revealing things to each other, going to the spots that, they used to spend time with the people they lost, but being now with each other. Just the charm of Dawn's trying to teach Hank how to operate in this high-scale, highfalutin, rich restaurant. Oh, you use the knife, but you only use it once, and you put a little smidge of butter here, and then a little bit of jam. Oh, you're going to take all the jam, and she starts laughing. And this is what I'm talking about, the relatability between the characters, the warmth, the connectivity. I connect so much to that, and that is what has been lacking with the main characters of this show thus far. At least for my tastes. I heard somebody talking about having watched the first handful of episodes, and I'm assuming they must have watched them all in one fell swoop, which I think probably will give you a better sort of aspect of the growth of the characters, because I've been watching it episode to episode, week to week. And I'm, for my taste, I'm not seeing it the way this guy described it, as though he had watched all the episodes at once and felt that the progression, the characterization, the natural evolution of these characters was exemplary, which is anything but the way I have been viewing it. Seeing it episode to episode, week to week, I'm thinking because of the spaced out nature of it, so much time between the episodes, this is probably a series that is meant to be marathoned in one sitting or a couple of sittings over a couple of days, where maybe if you watch it that way, you'll get a much more impactful characterization for the main foursome. But again, watching it week to week, episode by episode, I'm lost for that. I'm not getting that. I'm not getting exemplary characterization, relatable characterization of the main characters, with, as I say, the exception of Dick, and especially Beast Boy, after his still carrying the weight of having attacked a human and bit a human being for the first time in his life, as carried over from the Asylum episode into the Donna Troy episode. And so we get an episode like this, much like the Doom Patrol episode, which is now a close second favorite to this one, Hank and Dawn. And it absolutely boggles my ever-loving mind how the rest of this show is not being written like this, how the rest of the characters are not being written like this, with the main foursome, the ones who are on the posters, being considered second-class citizens to these background DC Comics universe characters. I don't get it. For the life of me, I don't understand why that is. But this was a spectacular episode. It gets 2 thumbs up. If I'm to borrow that rating system, 4.5 out of 5 stars, whatever you want to call it. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It thoroughly engaged me. The characterization, the relatability, the empathy, the sympathy, the emotive qualities of the characters in the way they interacted with each other and related to each other, whether it was Hank and his little brother, or Dawn and her mother, or Dawn and Hank once they had lost these people in their lives. It was great. Again, spectacular. And I'm astounded that the rest of the series can't be written this well, for whatever reason. I don't know. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 9 of the DC Universe Titans series entitled Hank and Dawn. And I'd like to ask if you'd like to consider supporting my channel and my efforts on YouTube to see me continue to do this. If you would have a look at my PayPal contribution link posted both in the description as well as the comments below, very much akin to Patreon. You have options you can explore as far as setting up a monthly sort of contribution, a one-time only contribution, or you can send a contribution along with a personal message to request topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, things like that. And it would just go far and away above and beyond to support me, a direct line of support to me, and keep up my longevity on YouTube and keep me going strong. But yeah, anything you saw fit to send my way would be very much appreciated. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.